Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Main Thing. My guest today is Bryant Ferate, who I am so excited to have on. And this is actually episode 1. We did a pilot episode for Ferate on his podcast 2 weeks ago, and I was inspired by him and that conversation. And so now we're here starting The Main Thing. So I figured we'd start with a little bit of a background on yourself, Roddy, and your kind of path to University of Portland, if you just want to walk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm fired up to be here. This is sick. Getting it rolling with, we were talking about this right before you clicked record, but just getting our repetitions and getting our reps in, finding a way to be better at having like deep conversations. So I'm excited to be here. And yeah, my background, my name is Bryant Ferate. I'm currently a performance coach at the University of Portland. And my path before that, I feel like pretty typical in regards to the strength conditioning profession in regards to college athletics. I grew up in a town about an hour west of Seattle, Washington, and I ended up finishing my undergrad at Washington State University, and I was involved there in an undergrad internship where basically it started at first like 10 hours just volunteering and then building it out from there. So I think at one point it was like 40 to 50 hours a week during my undergrad for 2 years. And I knew I really wanted to be involved in coaching, and really the only way to develop as a coach is getting on the floor and getting involved, learning from coaches. And that path just took me, I did a summer internship at the University of Kentucky, and then I came back to Washington State because I ended up graduating in the winter semester. Uh, and then from there, after graduating, I explored some of my options of what it looked like. And I knew at that time I really wanted to be involved in college athletics. And I moved back uh, to the University of Iowa. I interned there, same thing. Amazing coaches. They really helped me develop just as a person and as a strength coach. But I think most of all as a person, we had a really cool group there. Not to get long winded, but it was really cool. We had 5 or 6 interns that all wanted to be college strength coaches, which is actually pretty unique. A lot of the internship, it's like someone wants to be an athletic trainer, or they want to go to PT school, or they want to be a personal trainer. So we were just a really close group from the internship standpoint, and with all the coaches, like we'd hang out outside of work, and they just really cared about us as a person. And from there, just I went to grad school at UT Arlington for 2 years. Coached and went to grad school. I actually moved to the University of Portland. I got hired here part time, and Coach Cat Wade and Griffin Waller, who's the current director, they both were working here. And just in that part time role, I ended up moving and working for the Minnesota Twins in that spring. And then halfway through the season, I had the chance to come back to the University of Portland in a full time role, which at that time I didn't really think that was possible, but they called, said an opportunity opened up, and I couldn't pass it up. So now I've been here. I've been losing track of the times, but it's like 5. I mean, technically, I think this is my 6th if you count my fall semester. But then when I came back, I believe you would have been 2019. So I think it was my second full year
Mm-hmm.
when you were here. Um, Maybe don't quote me that on the math. I got to write it out. But um, yeah, that's kind of my path to where I'm now. I've been here at the University of Portland, and just trying to make every day the best day.
I love it. So
Yeah.
going back to a little bit more of like your high school, you in high school, were you playing sports in high school? Were you like, at what point in your path did you know that you wanted to be a coach? Like, were you an athlete and then all of a sudden you woke up and one day and you wanted to be a coach? What did that transition look like?
Yeah, I love that question. I actually just was just talking with some of the baseball guys about that recently. Yeah, in high school, to be honest, like I wasn't very good. I played baseball, and I like
Mm-hmm.
playing all the other sports, but I guess team and competitive wise, like I played basketball growing up, and we'd go play fives on the weekend and stuff. But primarily, I played baseball. Yeah, to be honest, like all I needed, I think looking back, was I just needed a coach. And I needed more of a coach. And it's completely on me. Like I guess in the moment I didn't really realize it. But I needed more like direct instruction and direct coaching versus just like the typical broad high school coach where there's a lot more people, right? Like I didn't get a lot of like individual technical work um, where I would work really hard and work on things. But that was one area where I just fell in love with coaching at that point because I was
Hmm.
just I just really I mean I think another part was I knew I had to train. Like I worked. I mean, typical story of like I wasn't very good, so I knew I had to practice, train really hard, train in the weight room. But the epicenter for coaching is I I don't know. I thought this was normal, but I guess I've realized more and more it's not. Um, but yeah, when I was like 10 or 12, I kind of realized I was like, dang. And I wish someone would have like stopped me from this, but I was like, all right, genetically, I'm not there. Like I'm not super tall, I'm not super fast. Um, and it kind of like I got this in my head and my dad coached when I was a lot younger. He coached baseball and a couple other sports at the high school. But I was like, wow, like a lot more of coaching is 100% in your control because
Hmm.
you just can learn about coaching and you just learn how to interact with people where maybe I didn't have the skills to like make it to the big leagues. And I remember
Sure.
when I was like 12, I said that I was like, yeah, like typical 12-year-old, you're like, yeah, what's your goal? And I was like, oh, I want to be a professional baseball player, but if that probably won't work out, so I want to coach. And I didn't really know what that meant then, but I don't know why. For some reason, I just thought like you just read books, talk to people, learn from people. It's actually, I love the question because it's something I've been thinking about a lot more recently, and I'm trying to more write about it and kind of sort through like
Hmm.
where was my mind at and what did I need, and maybe how's that impacting me now.
Yeah. Well, I love the idea of like, I mean, any person who's in the sports world would know that, genetics definitely play into the role of an athlete's performance. And, you know, I think the takeaway there is that there's not too many genetic components to being a good coach or even just a good person, and that takes developing the skill of coaching, working on it, and interacting with people, doing your research, reading and whatnot. And I think it's like you said, controlling the controllables about what you can, um, which I love. And so, okay, so after high school, went to Wazoo, and then you went to a. I thought I went to a lot of colleges. You've been all over the map. University of Kentucky, um, Arlington, Iowa, Wazoo, and now you're at University of Portland. I'm interested to know like what your experiences were like at each university. Maybe if you just want to talk generally about, how you got to each one, what the environment was like. Did you have a favorite? And we'll kind of start there.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I have been at a lot of places. I don't know. It was something that looking back on it, it was just I knew I wanted to grow and get out of my
Mm-hmm.
comfort zone, and maybe at the time I was a little optimistic and a little green and I didn't really realize. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm driving across the like driving 44 hours to go live somewhere else. Like that's what you got to do. Like you want to, I mean, my number one drive was like, I just wanted to see a different area. I wanted to see how a different environment in regards to coaching and just interact
Sure.
with different coaches. And I just knew
And
like,
if you don't mind me pausing there for a second, what was
yeah,
the did you reach out to these programs, or were they like how does a normal person go about getting some of these internships that you got lined up? Did you just simply send an email to the director of the program, be like, "Hey, I'm Friday, this is what's up," or what was that like process like?
yeah. So I mean, a lot of mistakes and a lot of learning lessons just in that. But a lot of like the number one thing I think is first communicating. And now, I mean, I know from being a coach and we have volunteer coaches with us. But I think the first part is just having a conversation with the coaches. And I learned that throughout my
Mm-hmm.
process of like, hey, I want to do an internship somewhere else. Do you do you have any feedback for me? And like the first part is doing a great job of where you are. I think you need to do a great job where you are and where you're putting your work in before, like if you're not asking the coaches you work with for feedback or how you can be better, but you're asking them like where else could you go intern, like
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of just out of order. It's not bad, but it's just out of order. And I think so then building it from there, it's just talking with the coaches of like, hey, who do you know? Who would you want to go intern with? I think is because ultimately like a lot of schools they want the help because it's free. You're trading an experience for time. And
Right.
um I really think it's just like making sure that it lines up with you. So I mean they post job listings and you reach out to the internship coordinator. So um whether like for example, like Coach DeVrent is the internship coordinator at the University of Kentucky. So I reached out to him and Coach Spurlock, who is the director. Hey, I'm really interested. At that time, Coach Hamill was the performance coach at Washington State, and I was working with her. She did her graduate assistantship at Kentucky, so she was able to like get me connected with them. And you still go through like an interview process. Like obviously they're gonna vet who's a good person, who's committed, um, what people's goals are. But
Right.
yeah, throughout that process, I guess I was just reaching out to coaches and having conversations with them, and it's getting better at, especially at that age. You're like trying to get better at like talk, like when you're 20 or 21 and just trying to get
Mm-hmm.
better at like being professional and talking on the phone or sending a professional email. Um, yeah, I guess I mean that's really it. And you just get better at it as you go through the process, and it's figuring out what works for you too. Like maybe you're going to intern somewhere where you have a family friend, and
Mm-hmm.
then you can have like a place to stay because that's the financial part is tough when it's for free and you're volunteering your time or
Right.
um but you, yeah.
And then, so, looking back on each internship that you had, was there one that stuck out to you or that impacted you the most?
Yeah, I think sorry, it cut out a little bit. It's the Wi-Fi on my end.
No
It's the
worries.
school Wi-Fi getting after it. Um,
Come on, UP.
but I was gonna, yeah, yeah, I guess for the experiences, just one that stuck out. I think they all just had little different themes, and
Mm-hmm.
the themes matched up with where or chapters for me. Like Washington State, it gave me a start, and it was my first opportunity to one observe, like not even coach. I mean, I cleaned all the equipment for a whole semester. Wasn't even allowed to coach. Like, just watched, and um, it changed a lot. Like you get a lot more. I like later in my internship, we got it integrated a lot more quickly, but I think Washington State just gave me a start, and I worked with almost every single team there, other than like women's golf and football. Like I would help set up for football sometimes, but
Mm-hmm.
I think Washington State was just a platform for like me figuring out me, um, get my feet wet, and trying to just grow because I spent a lot of time there and I had classes. Um, Kentucky was like a different environment. Just it was like really close knit family. Of coaches, like they'd all been there for a while, and it was actually a cool experience. The longtime director had just moved up into administration, so when I got there I didn't know any better, but actually like all the roles were bumping up. So the assistant director was now in charge, the previous assistant is now the assistant director. They're in the process of hiring another coach, and there were two graduate assistants who they're like two of my best friends. Like they just really helped me develop uh,
Mm-hmm.
just a team environment across the staff. They were really big into Olympic weightlifting and competing. So that was just another difference. And it was the summer, like it was a summer training block. So that's a little bit different with the student athletes. It was fun. You could almost like integrate teams. So there'd be a track workout days where it wasn't just like, hey, the soccer team's going out there. It was like collectively all of the teams went on the track and trained together on Fridays.
Mm-hmm.
And then
were you able to meet Coach Cal
no,
Ferry?
no shot.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening and watching this far. I am editing this podcast right now, and as you can probably see from the first half, the audio and video was not very good, but I'm learning while I'm doing this, and I switched over to a Google Chrome browser halfway through the episode in my conversation with Ferate, and so this second half is going to be much clearer, a lot better quality, and I think overall better. So here's a brief pause. Thank you for watching, and let's get back into it. Okay, after a brief intermission, we're back. I don't know if you're listening to this, but I may sound better, and hopefully the quality is better. I am learning while I'm doing this podcasting, so I switched from a Safari browser to a Google Chrome browser, and so now we're back. And I think the next, I kind of want to transition a little bit before we transition to the writing, podcasting, everything that you're doing. I have a question for you about what you do with freshman athletes when they arrive at UP. Specifically, like, what are you trying to get them to be able to do? And what are some things that, high school athletes can work on to try and make that transition in the weight room easier?
Yeah, I think it's two parts. Like, a part of it for me is going to be the weight room based, like, physical preparedness side of things. So when we get a freshman, we'll just, like, first it's having a conversation with them, like, hey, have you had a strength coach before? Have you trained? What is uh, maybe it seems like it's a no brainer, but it's just like the basics, like injury history. Have you had a strength coach? How did you play? Using like baseball as an example, did you play summer ball? Where? Cool. Are you currently playing summer ball? Because a lot of times I'll connect with them before they get here. But just overall, it's like, what does it look like your past few months? Like, maybe you're just playing summer ball and you haven't been training. And then building it out from there, injury history. What do you feel like you're the best at? Sometimes you get that typical, like, oh, I can deadlift 500, and you're like, okay, man, like,
Yeah, sure.
take it easy. But I think really it's just like, what do you feel confident doing, and having that conversation where a lot of the student athletes will be like, I've never trained in here before, or I don't really know what I'm doing. And then building out from there, the freshmen, it's just a lot of teaching. Like, we have a lot of time. Like, it feels like you don't have a lot of time, but in reality, you have a lot of time to teach them, like, how to do things well. And a couple things I tell the athletes, it's like, I want them to be confident and competent in what they're doing. I want them to be able to coach themselves and coach others. And I want them to be in a position. I mean, I will be there, but I want them to be, I want to build a skill where they could train over winter break, or they could train during the summer when they're playing summer ball in their next season after their freshman year, where they know what's going on, instead of having to text me, how do I warm up? And then building that out, it's like being world class at the basics. It's just, can you know how to warm up? Can you squat, hinge? Can you do a horizontal push pull? So like a TRX row and a push up. Can you do something on a single leg? And do you know how to control your pelvis, rib cage, torso, from that standpoint? And it's kind of a rabbit hole of each one, but it's like just really, really keeping it simple. And then it's building off that basic. And I mean, nothing I'm created, everything I've put together and everything I've implemented is learned from other people and other coaches. And like Zach Dakant from TCU has like an amazing resource with his book and all of his online material that I've really just built off of, like, how does it fit my environment? But I'd say just being really good at those, and being really good doesn't mean super heavy. It's like moving well. Can you put on I always ask the athletes, I'm like, I need you to put on a kids clinic in technique first. Like, go to work. And then from there it's building out, right? You can get that more advanced, but I think it's like, can you do a push up? Can you do a TRX row? Can you do a body weight or a goblet squat? Do you know how to RDL or hip hinge? Can you get into your backside? Does your squat and your hinge look different? and then building it out from there. And then I think the other part that's really, really big for high school student athletes and or just high school anybody, whether you're playing a sport or not, is from a health standpoint, like really getting your health squared away. And what I talk about in that is just like being able to write out your schedule. Like when I always say when to what, and it's hard to know what you're going to work on at practice or what you need to do that day if you don't know when you're going to do it. And
Mm.
I think that's vital for high school kids. It's just like, when are you going to practice? When do you need to wake up? When do you need to eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a snack? When are you going to do homework? Um, Starting
Well,
there with
yeah.
maybe even non-negotiables, and then like, when are you going to hang out with your friends, or when are you going to spend time for yourself? And I think that's the other part of performance where I would be blown away if a high school kid came in, and we do this with our guys, but we have them write out their whole schedule. So like, when do you have classes? When do you have practice? When do you need to go to bed? When do you need to wake up? And then it's all without judgment. Like, if you say I'm going to eat breakfast at 9 o'clock and eat at 9:30, it's not bad. It's just feedback. Like, you're not going to be pissed off and at yourself, but I think that's more of like my health bucket or just life bucket of like, do you have a plan? Because a lot of that, when you come in as a freshman, you're like, oh man, I got 5 classes, I'm living by myself, or I got a roommate, I got to go, like, I'm not cooking for myself. They serve pizza every day at the cafeteria. Oh, I got these meal points. Who cares? It's just like life skills.
Yeah, well, and I think the sooner that you can craft a schedule in high school and focus on the things that you need to do, the better you're going to be once you arrive at college. Because I remember my freshman year, arriving at University of Portland, and I had two other roommates in a small little room, and it was a big slap in the face. Like and you have 6:30 weights 3 days a week, and then you got class after that, and then you got fall ball, and there's a lot of things that you got to do because you were recruited to go there to do them, and prioritizing what you need to get done is absolutely essential in making sure that you're taking care of your performance, but also your overall health and well-being. So I really like that point. And I would just say, if you have a piece of advice, like if you have one movement or one like skill that you think is absolutely essential for being efficient and competent, or confident and competent in the weight room. Like if you had to pick one movement that builds confidence and competency in the weight room, what would you pick?
Hmm. Honestly, the first thing that came to mind was consistency. It's like,
Nice.
in reality, it's like there's no pattern. Like, it's like whatever. Like, if the only thing you do is a push up, or
Mm-hmm.
you play your sport and do push up, it's like I would rather have a freshman where I'm like, wow, that kid like watched YouTube videos, really practiced his push up 3 times a week. Um,
And he's
I think
world
it's
classic
just,
at the basics.
yeah, and it's just like,
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is consistency. Like, we run into this all the time, whether it's college athletics or your life as a coach. Me personally, it's like, oh, I don't have time, and
Mm.
it's looking at the high school season. I know we've been using baseball as an example quite a bit, but it's just looking at, like, if you're playing summer ball, you have time to be consistent with 20 to 30 minutes of literally at the field before the game. You pick what days, depending on what position you play, but you could literally do a body weight series, sprint and warm up, sprint and do a body weight series. And if you do that 20 minutes a week as a high school kid with the intent of doing it well, and whatever well may be on your spectrum of things, like watching YouTube videos, you can reach out to coaches, um, just being consistent. That's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 times 12. Boom, you got 36 sessions, and you're 36 times ahead of a lot of people. Not that it's a competition, but you're building that consistency versus like, oh, I'm gonna go to the gym for 3 hours once every 2 weeks. But I
Right.
think I think that's the essential skill. And then you tie
Yeah.
that into baseball. It's like, or any sport, it's like, do you go to the gym and shoot for 20 to 30 minutes outside of your practice? Are
Mm-hmm.
you consistently going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time within reason? Um, yeah, I would say the number one thing is consistency, which it's the one of the hardest.
Yeah, I love that. Consistency is the hardest. Okay, well let's shift gears a little bit and from the coaching and a little bit into the life of Ferrati. And I think I just want to start with, let's walk through a day in the life of Ferrati. What time you wake up, all the way to what you do in your day, and then when you go to bed. Because I have my next question has to do with you're obviously very busy. How do you find time to write and whatnot? So let's start with what you do on a typical
Hmm.
day,
Yeah, a
typical
day in the
weekday
life.
for
I would say,
Ferrati.
oh, and not even saying no to other people, just like saying no to things. I've
Mhm.
noticed, and I've done this a lot, but I'm getting a lot better at it. Is I'll be like, oh, these are like my top 20 priorities, or like these are my 20 projects on, and then I'll
Mhm.
just count myself like I'm putting 5% into each one or $5 into each thing, and I've been really trying to prioritize. This is what I'm gonna do. Um, but yeah, average day. I mean, just going through like my Monday, I had a baseball group in the morning, so I woke up at 5:30. I'll read a little bit in the morning and journal. Usually it's a mix. Like sometimes I'll just read the whole time, sometimes I'll journal the whole time, or sometimes I'll do both. And usually it's just 20 minutes. I would something I want to do is like move around a little bit more, but I just
Mhm.
read, write, have some coffee, and I'll cook breakfast, pack up. I'm at the office around like 6:50, 7 o'clock. Baseball guys start getting there around between 7 and 7:15. Some guys like to get here pretty early. We'll start the session at 7:30. They train 7:30 to 8:15, sometimes 8:30, depending on the guy. We'll end as a group, and then some guys have some extra stuff to finish up. Usually like 8:30 to 9, I'll do a recap. So I'll send an email to the coaches, depending on the day. An email to the coaches and our medical staff of just like a scout report of how the session went, knock out some paperwork. Usually 9 to 10, I'll have some kind of meeting. It's just like an open block, or I'll have injured student athletes come in and they'll train. Um, or I'll use that, maybe sometimes I'll use that block to like connect with the coach or something, give somebody a call. It's kind of like it's my quote unquote free time, but I definitely spend it in some way. Um, then 10:30 to 11:15 is cross country. 11:15 to 11:45's recap of cross country lift, prep for women's basketball, and start women's basketball. They just finished up their season, so they're getting back into training. We just have a couple groups. We have some girls that are coming back from an injury. We have some girls coming off playing a full season, and then we have like a redshirt group that they basically practiced and all year. They just didn't play in the games. Get them rolling. 11:45 to 12:30. 12:30, 1:15 men's soccer or spring season lift. They'll come in and train. Guys will stay after till like 1:30. 1:30 to 15, I'll meet with men's soccer coaching staff, update them on the session. I'll come back to my office after that meeting and crank out some emails and get a training session in.
Mhm.
And then I'm in my afternoon. Yeah, afternoon. It's like get all of what I just did squared away, and then I'll prep for tomorrow and the next couple of days. In
Right.
reality, it's like it could be worse. Like I could have more teams, and it's nice. I'm quote unquote open. And now it's like I need to work on paperwork, programming, whatever that looks like. I'll really, I train jujitsu on the side just to like fill my cup. And that usually starts from 5 to 6 or 6 to 7:30. And usually I'll use that gap in between, just catch up on work, get squared away. Um, I'll either train. I've been trying to hit some zone 2 work on the days I go to jujitsu. So I'll hop on the assault bike or echo bike and
Let's go.
just hit like 20, 30 minutes, like something chill. Like I'm not cranking out too much, but I always just say it's like just a snack. Like I just hit a little
Mhm.
bit and um yeah, and then I'll go to Cathedral Coffee most of the time. It's a coffee shop near campus, and I'll
The
usually go for a
best
walk.
coffee shop near
Yeah,
campus. The best.
yeah. I need to not share it as much so I don't get as
Yeah.
many people to
Yeah.
go.
Don't go there if you're listening to this.
Yeah, but I'll usually go there and just kind of collect my thoughts. I'll just sit down, and I've been working to get more consistent at just like brain dump, like put I've been using Notion, which is a note-taking app that connects my laptop to my phone, and I'll just hear something cool on a podcast, or I'll be reading something. I'll take a note so I can go back. I'll kind of just do some like brain dump it, like write it out. Um, do I think provides value or delivers value to people? Do I think it's cool? Like that's my number one thing. Like, am I curious about this?
Hmm.
I usually just try to keep it to an hour, like instead of really cranking. And it's like training. It's like if you train for 30 minutes every day, that's probably better than doing like 4 hours one day and then you're so busted up you can't go. But
Right.
I'll write in the afternoon. My biggest, it's like, it's just deciding what I want to do, you know? It's like, am I going to
Yeah.
write? Am I going to read? Am I going to journal? It depends on the day, but I'm always trying to do something to invest in me, go home, eat a snack, and I'll go to jiu-jitsu from like it takes me like 20 minutes to drive there. So 5:30, I'll leave, get there by 6, warm up, train 6 to 7:30, come home, eat dinner, and I know I'm
And
really time based. Like in the evening, I'm just chill. Like I'll read.
yeah.
I'm not a big TV watcher. Like sometimes I'll watch like a documentary, but very rarely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just chill, journal, get some good sleep. That's kind of like that was actually roughly what my Monday looked like. So
Cool. Well, and so I'm curious about Notion because my note taking strategy is first, again, like I think it's important to have some form of content consumption strategy to funnel the ideas, tools, concepts that you get from the content that you're consuming into either a notepad or something. And I currently just use my notes. And so I have, like, I call it the idea factory. I have a note that says the idea
nice.
factory, and then I'll put it all in there. And then I have a couple other tabs of notes for specific things that I'm targeting on social media platforms or whatnot. But I I started with Trello, and I like Trello, but it's just not conducive to what I'm trying to do right now. And I've heard a bunch of people talk about Notion. So what do you like about Notion that you you use, or why you use it?
Yeah, I mean, this is all stolen from I mean, some people we follow on social media, like Sahil
Yeah.
Bloom, and um, I got the idea from him and Dickie Bush and Nicholas Cole, and basically it was they were just talking about your content diet, and then there's this like content funnel. So
Hmm.
funnel first is consumption, like how are you consolidating your thoughts? And to be honest, like I would say like my BS notes go in my notes on my phone. I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
that's sick. And I like randomly will toss it in there. And then maybe once a week I'll scroll through and be like, what was I thinking? And it's like
Yeah.
just random stuff where my I'll use a Notion board. So the cool part about Notion is like they have like pages and you can edit a lot of it where you basically can create whatever you want. So they gave me the idea of the Notion board, and it's basically like not yet started, working on, and finished. And
Hmm.
something I've done is like I'll just it's just a tab, and then it opens up its own separate page, and I'll just put the date. So like maybe I get an idea from this conversation, so I'd put like what is it, like today's the 31st, so it'd be like 3:31 crack, and then I'd open it and be like, okay, this was a conversation with Noah Cracknell. We did a podcast. This gave me an idea. And then it's just
Hmm.
like, one, it's dated because sometimes I get stuck on like not done yet, started, finished. I don't do a very good
Right.
job of keeping that organized, but I'll just type stuff in my phone real quick and then I can come back to it on my phone and type it in.
Sure.
Um, that is where I started of just like I need to consolidate my thoughts. And it's kind of I think the other part is just a forcing. It like forces me to be like, oh, here's all my stuff. Where like my
Yeah.
notes on my phone, I've caught like Google Drive. It just gets a lot like it's not
Yeah.
as easy accessible. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, Notion is just it's like, okay, that is a thing where anything I think is cool is gonna be on there. definitely could be more organized, but that's the way I've done it. And then it turns into like I'll write my articles there, then I'll take that, edit it on there, and then transfer it over to like whatever platform I'm using to post. But I
Right.
know I was going to ask you. I actually have a question.
Yeah.
Um, you've been doing a lot of threads on like the podcast you listen to, and
Hmm.
what's that note taking process look like for you? Because I feel like when I listen to a 2 to 3 hour podcast or even an hour and a half with like a bunch of hitters, it's I find myself just typing. I'm almost like typing the whole episode out in my notes.
Yeah.
What does that process look like for you, for from listening to note taking to the like turning it into like a couple quick hitting tweets?
Yeah. So the first, well, I guess to back up, I want to grow my Twitter account, and I was thinking about good ways to do that. And one of the ways that I came up with was, Twitter's algorithm. If you tag someone and that person, for example, I've tagged Sahil Bloom and Dickie Bush and listened to their podcasts. When I tag them and they like it, it gets shared in the algorithm more, and like so their followers will like it and engage with the content. And so, not to say that I'm like trying to like use their audience to leverage my own and get people to visit my site, but I just want to increase my surface area for which my tweets are reaching. And so
Hmm.
that was kind of the motivation for it. The actual protocol is I mean, I already listen to podcasts all the time. So I'll listen to a podcast every day, and I will try to gather 3 insights from the podcast that I found very valuable. And sometimes I gather way more depending on the length of the episode and whether or not Dr. Attia or Huberman's talking. Usually I take way more notes on those guys than other podcasts, but I'll try and gather 3 insights, and then I'll write them down in my podcast note section on my notes app on my phone. And then I will take those 3 insights and create a thread with them. So I'll have the main tweet, and then those 3 bullet points will be individual tweets in the thread. And I'll expand on those points, deliver some of my own insight if I have it, or link to a resource that I found valuable. And I will tag, obviously, the people who were in the podcast, who conducted the podcast. And I found this way to be like a really quick hitting way of like increasing your traffic and impressions on Twitter. I think last month I had like 30,000 impressions on Twitter, and then all of a sudden it blew up to like over 100,000 people like saw all the tweets that I wrote. And I think a big driving force of that, and granted I've been doing this for less than 2 weeks, so it's still very much in the testing phase, but I think a big part of that is just putting together these little, bite-sized pieces of podcast content so that people can get an idea of what the podcast is about, who's doing the podcast, and if they're interested in listening to it. And so that's kind of the protocol and framework that I've been rocking with for that, and it's been really fun.
Yeah, you're killing it with that. I like your stuff pops up a lot on mine just because I've liked quite a bit of your stuff, but always having like engaging replies with
Right.
people. It's something I've thought about a lot with like when you're replying versus just like, oh, this is cool, versus like,
Yeah.
are you replying with maybe like a question or maybe an additive that provides value to everybody? You're not just adding to be like raising your hand and saying like,
Right.
yeah,
Well,
here's
there's a
me
difference
adding something.
between, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a difference
Yeah,
between like,
you're killing it with that.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm killing it with it. I in my notes, I wanted to bring up the fact that you had a tweet go like baby viral, um, about the Bison, and
Yeah.
it got 124. Oh wait, no. Let's see. I'm gonna pull it up right here. But it went crazy. It was a tweet under Tim Urban. I'm trying to find it, but oh, here it is. It says bison run towards storms to get them over with quicker, compared to cattle who run away from storms, which actually make them stuck in the problem longer. Good life lesson. And I was like, I love this. What an insight about life. Be the bison. And it got 21 retweets and 155 likes, which for, audiences or followings our size is pretty good.
Yeah, that was actually I was talking with a couple of the student athletes I coach because they've heard me tell that Bison story before, and
Yeah.
they were like, "Oh man, people are liking it," and it's that was probably the best tweet I've ever had. Like up there, there was one article I posted about Andrew Huberman's research on gratitude,
Mm.
and he ended up like he posted like, "Oh, thanks for sharing this," and just him replying to it kind of blew it up because a lot more people will see it. But yeah, I mean, it's funny you say those stats because I was talking with some of the baseball guys, and it was like 155 likes is like almost 2/5 of how many people follow me.
Right, which is
Um,
really good.
yeah, which and I think it helps because Tim Urban is a legend and he's a really good
Hmm.
writer, and he has 500,000 followers. So there's a lot more people seeing that, and I think another part is like I just laugh because that's not the intention. I'm not like, oh, I hope a bunch of people see this. It was just like his tweet was like, post something interesting. Tell me something interesting. And I was like, yo, this is sick. Like this gets me hyped. And
Hmm.
yeah, I don't it was just like I posted something that I just think is cool. Like it gets me
Yeah.
fired up. And then like maybe it'll get other people fired up. And yeah, it's interesting. One thing I have noticed is like I think I've gotten one follower out of it. And but it's like that's okay. But it just gave me
Yeah.
more like it's definitely like a learning. Like how do I learn from this and how does it give me more feedback into what I do next? And I think it comes back to just like being genuine, like be a good person
Right.
and who are you posting for? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like going back to like the audience thing. It's like provide or not provide like I'm trying not to use that after what you posted, but it's it's like you're doing it for yourself, but not in a selfish way. Like, would you be proud of that? And would you think it's cool? Start from there.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. It, Bison's actually my word for 2022. So it's,
I love that. Do you want to
yeah.
expand on that a little bit? Like what that maybe where you first heard that story and like how or what the story is even?
Yeah. I mean, and it's ironic. We've talked about this before, but it's interesting when you don't know what people like. Like, I wrote an article about this twice, and I probably got 5 likes across both
Hmm.
tweets. But I've
Hmm.
sent it to like a bunch of my friends and they're like, "Oh, that's sick." And but then like literally I just post like 2 sentences about it on Tim Urban's thing and it starts popping off. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, I'm just a really curious person. Like I'm always trying to learn and I'm just like trying to wonder and get fascinated and be like, "No way." Like that is
Hmm.
sick. And that just makes me smile. It brings energy to my life and it's like how can I learn about that to make me a better me? And yeah, I heard the story. It was like these supposedly bison can see these big storms in Texas or Wyoming, and they're like, "Oh, here it comes!" And it's one of those I say supposedly because I've never seen it, But the
Hmm.
story, like they naturally group up, and then when the storm hits them, they all start like trotting into the storm just to get it over with. And that kind of when I heard that, I was like, no way. So then I actually did like a ton of research on bison, which is interesting. Like Native American call them buffalo, but it's like a language thing. So their word for them is buffalo, but they're actually bison. Buffalo are in Africa, like a water buffalo. So that's kind of
Hmm.
like the confusing part. And then yeah, I just thought it was sick. Like they're trying to get it over with. They know, like they're like, oh, if we run at it, it will end faster, which is like such a life lesson. And
Right.
I've been using that with myself of just like a reminder of like just be myself. Or when things get difficult, like a difficult conversation, being bold. Like there's a difference. Something I've been thinking about a lot is like the difference between being bold and being blunt. And then on the other side of it, it's like being compassionate or being a people pleaser. And there's like this spectrum, and you want to sway back and forth, but you don't want to go too far in one. Um, you don't want to be a people pleaser, or I don't want to be, and I don't want to be overly blunt where it like tarnishes a relationship. But I do want to be able to be bold, courageous, and say what's on my mind, as well as be compassionate. And the bison kind of just reminds me of that. And like, it's a hard conversation. You're like, I'll wait till they're in a better mood or something. And you're like, no, okay, we're going to face this right now because that's the better option.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of, and then it just opened up the door. There's a lot of cool stuff about Bison, like when it snows and there's a really deep snowpack, they all get in a line, and then one just walks with its head down to
Mm.
create a trail, and they take turns, and they push all the snow out of the way with their head so that they all can walk to like conserve energy. And
That is awesome.
yeah, which and all this stuff is like it's just I've read it on the internet. Like I've never seen it, which
Yeah.
I'm trying to someday.
Yeah.
I want to go to Yellowstone and see some bison. Hopefully a storm hits. But yeah, we're like it's interesting like they're how resilient they are. Like their population was insane. It got decimated when everybody was just like moving west way back in the day. Like it got down to like I think it was like a couple thousand, and now it's skyrocketed back up. So yeah, I just got a little curious about the resiliency of a bison. And then in my article, I just related to student athletes. I was like, yo, it's finals week, or it was dead week, I think. And I told women's basketball and baseball, and I was like, you got to be the bison, like the finals coming, don't get away from it. Like lean into that final and just get it like. And I think the important part is like the bison recognizes the storm, sees it, and goes
Mm.
towards it. They're not trying to, and I say get it over with, but I think the
It's
important
leaning
part in
into
that,
discomfort, you know?
yeah, lean into it, not get it over with.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think be the bison is a good 2022 motto. And I love that. And
Yeah,
so,
the bison emoji fired me up. I didn't really realize there was one of those.
oh yeah, no, you gotta. I think you should draft a few more tweets on the bison topic and throw in that bison emoji, and then you'll get retweeted by Sahil and all those guys. The bison
There you
emoji's
go.
key. It's key.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's the
okay, well
thread
we
starter.
yeah, that's the thread starter. The emojis are key in the thread starter. Well, we got a few more minutes. I want to make sure that we have enough time to get you back to coaching, but I want to spend a little bit of time talking about your Substack experience. And I'm curious. I know this is a little bit of a selfish question, but I have started doing a little bit of research on like ConvertKit, different email platforms and whatnot. And I was wondering what your experience on Substack is like.
Yeah, I think one big barrier of entry for my writing was just sharing it and getting it out in public. And I think Substack and Medium. I went with Medium, and then I just was following a lot of like the people we've already mentioned in this podcast, and they went into Substack and this newsletter. And just the barrier of entry of like being able to post stuff and get it out to people was super
Right.
easy for me because I was like, oh, I'm writing all these articles, but I need to like buy a domain and create a website. And that's something I may explore, but the Substack just made it more simple. And that time I hadn't heard of ConvertKit. I actually listened to that podcast with the newsletter podcast or with Nathan Barry.
Uh, Nathan Barry Show. Yeah. The art of newsletters.
Art of Newsletters. Yeah. And I was like, oh dang. So actually I've been looking into ConvertKit. I mean, Substack's super simple. And at first they had a spot where you could like record audio. So I would do these little short like snippets of articles. So I'd read the podcast. I did this like probably last June, and it was before I got more consistent with my writing. So like I'd put one on there once a month, where now I'm one every week and I don't do the audio. Um yeah, I mean, I just saw people doing it and I was like, dang, okay, like I'm only gonna learn if I try. And this is way easier than me like trying to buy a website and like design it and all the things like people I want to share content. I don't want to be like, wow, he has a sweet homepage of his .com
Right.
website. So I haven't looked at ConvertKit just I guess recently after that podcast, and I was like, I wonder. And my other thing was like, oh, I wonder why I've never heard of this.
Yeah.
Um, that's a question I asked, but I mean, it looks really legit, and I know a lot of people are big on it. So yeah, with the Substack, it just gave me like an easy barrier to entry to post my content and then get people to sign up via email versus just posting it on Twitter. And then Twitter is awesome. I just think sometimes it's tough because it just disappears. Like
Yeah.
I've even, my friend was like, "Hey, didn't you write an article on this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did." I'm like, "Let me find it." And then you have to like Google key terms with Bryant Ferate Twitter and then scroll through that and like look for it. That's something I'm interested in. Like all these people posting these threads. I'm like, how do you go back and find the thread that you wrote 2 months ago other than remembering the name? And
Hmm.
because then they like subtweet, they keep track of it. So then you see like they're all quote tweeted and it's like 1 through 90, 194. And it's, I'm like, are you just endlessly scrolling or is it, maybe it's easier on your computer? I don't know. That's a question I
Yeah.
have. Yeah.
Yeah, I think most people, well, in today, I think a lot of people are using like social media, like managing softwares where like TypeShare or something, where they can easily save like tweets and then come back to them, and like
Mm.
you can actually post tweets to Twitter through TypeShare and these other social media like managing platforms, and I think that's how they keep track of it. But it's a question I have too, because I'm going through my notes app, like scrolling a bunch, and then
Yeah.
looking at the thread that I created a month ago, and then trying to take a part of it and post it in a new thread or whatever. So finding a more efficient way to go about that would be good. um, okay, and so kind of switching gears towards the end of the episode, I have a few kind of just a little bit, not rapid fire, but if you want to expand on them a little bit. Um, a favorite trip, vacation, or travel adventure that you've been on in the last 5 years, and one that you want to go on in the next 5 years.
Hmm. Probably my favorite trip was the year before COVID. I went and visited my buddy who he was actually a GA at Kentucky, and
Mm-hmm.
he at the time got out of coaching and was going to school over in Salamanca in Spain. And he had just finished up school and was going on break. And yeah, I just flew into Madrid by myself. I hung out there for like a day and a half, and then I met up with him. And like I can't speak Spanish at all, and yeah, we just mobbed around Spain. Like we took a bus to Granada, which is south, and then we went over to Alicante on the coast, and then hung out there for a few days. And then we flew to Sevilla, like hung out there on the east or on the west side, and then we went to the Canaries, like out in the ocean down near Morocco, and then flew back. And I was probably there for 10, 12 days, and it was just a really cool experience. Like I'd never been to Europe, so that was my first time, and it was really cool. It was a good group. It was like um, me, him, his sister, and one of her friends, and we just it was a gang. We just like mobbed around, checked stuff out, and yeah, it was just a good challenge for myself, like getting out of my comfort zone, and um, yeah, I guess there wasn't like some single thing. It was just like just living life, and I
Yeah,
guess
you
trip
were
I
just
want,
living.
yeah, trip I want to go on. I mean, there's a list. I would love to take a big chunk of time and go to like Argentina. I it just
Mhm.
it looks sick and kind of like Tim Ferriss's whole thing is like you got to be careful going there because you'll never come back. And that was kind of the epicenter of a part of his like back in the day. He went there when he was like experimenting with his 4 hour work week. So I'd love to go there. Um, or somewhere in Mexico. I just want to like I think it'd be cool just to learn Spanish and just be down there for a bit. Um, yeah, that's off the top of my head.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and doing this little first episode of the main thing. I want to make sure that people can find you on all the social media platforms. So is your Instagram, Twitter handle all the same? Just Bryant Ferrati?
Yeah, yeah, that's something I've just my name Bryant Ferrati. It's unique. Like I don't think anybody else has it. So yeah, if you just search Bryant Ferrati Substack is my Substack articles, and then Bryant Ferrati on Instagram and Twitter is I've been trying to get the Instagram going more. I just have like a personal one, and then I've created one of just more of like consolidating my writing. So the Bison, maybe some other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, and we'll have to have you on for another episode soon.
Yeah, thanks again. I really appreciate your time. This is sick.